We're coming to you today from the Port of New Orleans, one of the many important stops for corn and beef exports on their journey overseas. Here's Cattleman to Cattleman reporter Kate Maher with more on this gateway for global commerce.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm here now with Janine Mansour, who is with the Port of New Orleans. Janine, thanks for joining us. Can you give us an overview of the port, please?
Absolutely. So the Port of New Orleans was created by the state of Louisiana. So we are a quasi-governmental agency. We're a very diverse landlord port. So we're leasing out all these facilities you see here to private terminal operators that are working the vessels and managing cargo on the terminal. We have 4 lines of business. So we have cargo, obviously, our bread and butter. Cruise, we're the 6th largest cruise port in the country. Real estate, of which we own about 2,500 acres of industrial real estate, and then rail. So we're one of the only ports that operates our own short line railroad that connects us to really the entire country through our rail network.
What percentage of the cargo that moves through here is agricultural?
About 20%. So, we are actually the most export heavy port of any port in the country. So about 70% of the cargo that we're moving is actually export, 30% import. You don't see this type of balance anywhere else in the country. In fact, on the West Coast, the California ports are pretty much the inverse of that. So 70% import, 30% export. So we play a huge role in supporting our U.S. agricultural exporters and moving their goods all over the country.
Yeah, you mentioned ship and rail. How do you feel all this gives you maybe a competitive edge in getting exports overseas?
Well, that's exactly right. Our competitive edge is really our connections. We are the most multimodal, as we say, port of any port because we have barge, we have rail, and then of course we have truck. So we have the best rail network connected to the Midwest, to the western part of the country and the eastern part of the country. And then we have access to 14,500 miles of inland navigable waterways via the Mississippi River and the connections to all the various inland rivers. So we really are a true gateway port, offering connectivity from the Midwest out to the world through our gateway connections.
You ship a lot of beef, I know too. So how do you keep cargo like beef or any other kind of product like that temperature safe?
Sure. So temperature sensitive cargo is definitely one of our areas that we're very strong in. So temperature sensitive cargo is either moving in refrigerated containers or in refrigerated vessels. So really the industry has migrated more to the refrigerated containers, which on terminal we have close to 900 reefer plugs. So these are plugs that the containers essentially plug into and then have a cooling unit to keep the cargo at its ideal temperature. We also have Lineage Logistics, which is the largest cold storage operator in the world. They operate over 400 facilities. They have 2 facilities in New Orleans, so they're providing cold storage warehouses to products like beef and other meat products.
And those containers can keep a constant temperature for the length of that trip of the container?
Exactly. So, and then the vessels themselves, like the one you see in the background, actually has reefer plugs on the vessel. So the containers are plugged into the vessel's reefer plugs on board for its entire journey to wherever it may be going.
Excellent and interesting information. We've heard a lot about supply chain issues these past couple years. What challenges has the port had?
These past 2.5, 3 years has been more challenging in new ways, I think, for every stakeholder across the supply chain. Some of the challenges we have faced is really there's been a boom in imports. With COVID, people were buying more online, spending less on services and travel, and so that drove a really big increase in imports. And being that we're a heavy export port, we faced challenges in that the imports were really being prioritized by shipping lines, and so we weren't seeing the regularity of ship calls just because they were prioritizing the import discharge and sometimes sailing back before exports could really be loaded. And so that was one of our challenges for supporting our exports as well as equipment. So equipment has been a global challenge, just availability of equipment to support exports, and that's both on the dry cargo side as well as the temperature sensitive side. And labor shortages are really across the supply chain. I don't think we've seen labor shortages worse than any other place. We have a very good labor force here, but we are starting to see some of the challenges just in supplying sufficient labor in different parts of the supply chain.
With as important as exports are to both beef and corn growers, how can organizations like NCGA and NCBA, how can we work to help make your life easier and help make sure that exports keep going out?
Definitely. I think the advocacy role of the importance of ports and various stakeholders working to support exports, even more so than imports, because it's more important than ever that our products get out of the country in a competitive manner. So supporting the cost efficiencies, avoiding massive delays. So I think there's the lobbying effort in working together with your associations and really just collaborating on how we can work more closely together to support our mutual exporters.
Well, thanks for all you do to keep our beef and corn moving overseas for us. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Kevin, we'll send it back to you.